Well, good afternoon. It's Richard Pearce from FinextraTV, and delighted today to be joined by Bevis Watts. Bevis, hello, how are you?
Hi, Richard. Good, thanks. Good to see you as always.
Well, as we were just saying before we started filming, the third interview, and really excited today that what we're talking about is you as CEO of Triodos Bank. You've led the bank for a decade coming up, championing sustainability, ethical banking, and obviously you've announced that you're going to be stepping down during this 10th year in charge. And
That's
we
good.
wanted to reflect a little bit on some of the insights, some of the learnings, and some of the future plans that you've got. So that's what we're going to cover today. And to that end, you started your career, I suppose, quite uniquely, studying environmental management and things of that nature, and then you went into banking. I've got to ask the question, what inspired you, motivated you to make that shift, and how did it influence your approach to that career in banking?
Yeah, thanks. I think I'm getting too old to remember, Richard, because a long time ago now. But yeah, you're right. I was a business student that became fascinated with corporate environmental management before it was really a thing. So before ISO 14001 and things like that even existed. But that spawned a sort of a decade-long career working in the UK recycling industry, and I was trying to pump prime investment in that industry using government money as guarantees to banks and so on. And I suppose in those days I just became very aware that all the conversations we were having with banks were primarily about risk and return. Impact didn't feature.
Yes.
And so it was in 2003 I was running a conference actually in Bristol where Triodos is based, and met a colleague from the bank then, and I just had my mind open. This is a very different kind of bank, that things impact first. What is it we're doing together? What is it we're trying to achieve before you then look at the balance of risk and return that sit behind any transaction. So that was my awakening, and a fascination with the role of money in society, how it could be used as a powerful force for good, and as a lever for change started then, really. So when I had the opportunity many years later to work for Triodos, I jumped at the chance, and yeah, that's really been the narrative that sits behind a fascination with the role of money.
Yeah, amazing. And so, if you think about this period of time, 10 years, as we say, almost, what have been the key milestones from starting, taking over, and the accomplishments really that you're most proud of?
Well, I suppose in the best part of a decade, you see a huge amount of change, and the world we're operating in has changed, dramatically, not least with Brexit and COVID, and also the technological landscape and so on. But I guess in terms of the journey of the bank, I took on what was primarily a sort of telephone and postal savings bank with limited internet banking functionality. And today we're a mobile first bank with an app store rating of 4.7 for the app and a Trustpilot score of 4.3. And we offer a much broader product set, a personal current account really designed to attract a younger activist demographic of people who want to be associated with a bank that shares their values and so on. And then I suppose on the positioning of the bank in the UK, we set out to be the kind of bank of choice for people that really do their research and understand what sustainable banking really means. And if you look at which ethical consumer, at Money Facts, we're typically top of the tree in their ratings of what they classify as green or sustainable banking. And yeah, most pleasingly, part of that brand positioning, if you like, are awards or accreditations voted for by customers. So Fairer Finance rate us as the most trusted bank in the UK, and we're consistently best ethical provider at the British Bank Awards, again, which are voted for on customer feedback and so on. So I suppose those two things, the product set and the transformation of where we're positioned in the UK, are things I'm very proud of. And that's meant we have scale to a degree. We've gone from a 1 billion balance sheet to a 2 billion balance sheet and around 40,000 customers to 100,000, which won't impress everyone in terms of scale, but it's never been about growth for growth's sake. The challenge we set ourselves is being a real leader in sustainability in a holistic sense, social and environmental. And we've been profitable every year, we've grown every year, and we've been a robust bank from a regulatory point of view. It's not a kind of venture capital backed model where we're, on a hockey stick to generate profits X years into the future. We're doing all of those things in parallel, which I think, it's striking that balance I'm most proud of, really.
And I think when you're a catalyst, really, which I suppose is also what you're seeking to do for the whole of the market, have you broken ground with, investing or new product areas that you feel, as I say, have broken ground, but also, you've gone on to see that perhaps being picked up by the rest of the market as a true catalyst should be?
Yeah, well, there's maybe two categories there. I suppose in what we finance, yes, I think we are catalytic. I can point to all sorts of firsts where I think we've made the first deployment of senior bank debt into that kind of, be it business or technology. So, the first all-electric intercity bus service in the UK between Dundee and Edinburgh was financed by us. The first major rollout of EV charging infrastructure to supermarket car parks, some 400 of them, was financed by us. And latterly, the various models of nature-based solutions and the first bank involvement in a number of different projects and structures of that type are things we have pioneered. And then, as it was with renewable energy in the 80s and in the 90s in the UK, other banks follow suit. And we see that as part of our job. Triodos becoming a huge juggernaut, one of the biggest banks, is not going to happen in my lifetime. It's not realistic. So we have to be that reference point that's pushing the boundaries. And then, yes, in terms of products and what we've done as a bank as well, we were the first UK bank to launch a proprietary investment crowdfunding platform in 2018. We've launched a number of funds, including a Future Generations fund that I think is unique in the UK market. And our current account has, a number of features in terms of the material we made the debit card from initially, and things that have all been quite pioneering and just challenged thinking on how can you integrate sustainability into your products and into giving customers a really deep connection with what their money does.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you've said already that you've gone through an amazing time in terms of the economy, pandemics, but also, the rise of sustainability and, some would say the sort of peaking at this particular time. But what are the most significant lessons you've learned during your time at the bank? And it may not be related to those things, it may be something else.
Yeah, there's lots, Richard. I suppose if I start with the big picture lessons of, I guess, what I've been trying to do with colleagues and a great team for many years is influence thinking on what the financial sector should be, the role it should play in society, how it operates. And if we take a look at that and the lessons from that over that time, I think you may have seen we've recently withdrawn from the Net Zero Bankers Alliance. And that's because that is a voluntary agreement that is effectively is being watered down to go to the lowest common denominator. And before that, we had the UN Principles for Responsible Banking, and I'd challenge anyone to go back and look at what those commitments were in 2018. Most of the UK's big banks signed up to them, and they won't have delivered on the vast majority of things they signed up to. They just used the PR moment to kind of reposition their brands towards green issues and so on. And so we've seen too much of that. So the biggest lesson for me, with many years, the best part of, 25 years trying to affect change in the financial system in one way or another in my career is ultimately we need to look at red lines around the industry and regulating much more around these issues than relying on voluntary agreements. And that's because the speed of change required is accelerating because of the lack of progress we're seeing. And there's lots of good things. Greenwashing regulation is a good thing, but it's also answering the wrong question. Ultimately, if you bring in greenwashing regulations, it has the biggest impact on banks like us. It puts the highest burden of proof onto those that are doing the most sustainable things. It doesn't drive change in businesses. It does nothing to stop them investing in fossil fuels or palm oil production and deforestation. It does nothing to address those things. So that's what I mean by red lines. We have to start saying, okay, this isn't working. So that's kind of the bigger picture.
And do you think, just to interject, do you think that, we're obviously in this sort of deregulatory kind of language around the world. Is the call for more regulation realistic at the moment? How do you reflect on the time we're in?
Well, realistic or not, I guess one of the personal lessons I've had is you really have to be sort of robust and resilient. It's absolutely the right view. Robust and resilient as a leader, and as a champion. And so it might not be in the zeitgeist right now, but it's absolutely the right thing we need to address. And I say it's borne out by the lack of progress we've seen and continue to see, really. I think the time will come again. I mean, ultimately, the level of scrutiny on the financial sector around issues of sustainability is pretty light.
Yep.
And there are very few sort of journalists who really understand the kind of dynamics within financial businesses and the things they really need to change. And what we need to be debating is ultimately the financial models of mainstream banks are not compatible with a net zero transition and a nature connected economy. And so we need to be discussing with that and talk about the expectations we therefore need to have of future financial sector. Maybe it can't be the cash cow of tax generation in the UK as it is at the minute, and so on. But that's where I really think the debate needs to head, and I'm sure that will be borne out. There's a number of things. If I look back over 10 years, we were saying 10 years ago as Triodos Bank, then people now would recognise, yes, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I think that's true. You've sort of touched on it there. We led into it a little bit, but you've taken us, if you will, through some of your motivations very quickly. We've cantered through this, but as you prepare to step down, and you're talking about regulation, but what other sort of goals and initiatives do you think still need to be addressed for Triodos Bank and for the wider industry?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things we're proud of is Triodos's role hasn't just been to sort of rail against the machine and call out poor behaviours. We've tried to constructively contribute things, and PCAF, the Partnership for Carbon Accounting Financials, was something we led the launch of in the UK during my time, and we're hugely proud of. But these are all building blocks. Ultimately, we're still, it's whilst that's become the kind of global best practice framework, it's still not formally adopted by regulators, and so there's things like that where I think a step change will be just agreeing common frameworks and some top-down approach to how things work. And I don't think that is over-regulation, and I don't think that's a contradiction with the things we talked about earlier in this deregulatory sort of era. I suppose you asked reflections on Triodos as well, and I think, as I said earlier, we set ourselves a very tall bar and difficult challenge in trying to balance sort of nationally leading, if not world leading, impact in what we do with people's money, running a robust bank from a regulatory risk perspective, and being profitable and growing every year. That's a very hard balance, and I don't see any institution getting that right, with the same holistic view of sustainability that we have, that deep impact approach, really. So, that's only achieved with a number of things in mind, and it's something crucial for me has been that diversity and ensuring you've got diversity of thought around you and representation of people from different backgrounds in the business. And we've made huge strides on that very early, long before the kind of Black Lives Matter moment in 2020. But I think that will be key for any organisation that wants to demonstrate in the future it's really viscerally connected to purpose and to societal issues. Is you have to have awareness of those issues and so on in the business. And I hope in a small way I demonstrate that, being a sort of environmentalist, come banker. I think those two things have to come together more over time. And, I think one of the reasons we've really led on nature-based solutions is because there was a deep inherent understanding of that, of those issues and knowledge and insight within the business.
Yeah. And if, obviously we're a fintech magazine, so we've always got a tech audience here as well. When you think about, you spoke a little bit about the move from, paper-based, if you will, to where you are now. What's your thoughts on the tech journey and where you've come to and where you need to go to?
Yeah, there's still a little bit of paper in the business, I'm afraid, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because where Triodos is now, I mean, the next step is more scale again, you know, and I'm very confident Mark, my successor, and the team will take the bank from 2 billion balance sheet to 3.5 billion as the next step. And that's really important, I think, for financial sustainability and to be able to continue to invest in the business at the scale we want. But technology will be a major driver of that, and you know we are experimenting with AI and deployment in realising internal efficiencies to change roles and support co-workers in being able to do more and have more efficient daily working lives, but also better customer outcomes. So all of that piloting is underway and so on. Ultimately, like many, I think we'll have a proprietary sort of data warehouse and core banking system, but that's what it will be. You know, we've already been looking at creating for many years more of an ecosystem with API sort of plugins and everything else. And so that will grow and grow, that theory of ecosystem and working in partnership with providers. And that has to be the future of growth. I can't see proprietary investment for any small bank working in a world that has changed, Richard. The costs of regulation have gone up significantly. The threats of fraud, other financial crime, cybersecurity, all mean you need to work in partnership with people who have systems that are scalable across multiple brands, if you like. I think that's the only way it can work. So,
absolutely.
So that's certainly how I see the future for Triodos.
I think that's, when I was doing my open banking role, back at Microsoft in 2008 or whatever, that was the vision. So it's good to hear, and I think it makes sense, particularly when you've got such a clear, definable core strength and purpose in addition to your banking. Then a lot of the other stuff, as you say, it can be done through partnerships and an ecosystem.
And I know that's not new, but I guess I'm saying we're only some way down that track, and there's lots of areas of the operations, I think, that can be opened up in that way.
Very good. If you were to go back to 2015, where you stand now, and able to give your younger self some advice about the role, about what you're about to embark on, what do you think your advice to your younger self would be?
Maybe stay in the conservation sector. I don't know. What if only you knew Brexit and the pandemic and then Trussonomics and cost of living and everything else was coming. No, look, I mean, I think any CEO would probably tell you they would do things quicker. Yeah. And then you have to remember why you were tempered at the time and everything else. And I'm pleased to say I think genuinely across all the biggest moments and decisions we haven't got in anything really wrong. But I would probably counsel myself about the scale of digital transformation and customer expectation will be much faster than you think and move quicker. And try and be further ahead of that curve, because we launched a personal current account to try and appeal to a much younger demographic and kind of appeal to people that connect across all demographics on values, and that's worked to a degree. And then you find out at the sort of the millennial and Gen Z level that the expectations on digitalisation are running much quicker than I think even the best in the market can keep pace with. So I think that would be advice I'd give myself, is to really move quicker.
And you prompted me to an additional question, which is that the sort of the Bill Gates quote was you overestimate what you can do in 2 years and you underestimate what you can do in 10. Is that still true with sustainable banking?
Yeah, it's a very interesting turn of phrase, that, because I'd certainly agree with the latter. I mean, I think the underestimate you can do in 10 years. I think if I look at Triodos as a whole, Europe-wide across 10 years and the UK, I think there'd be very few businesses that would be able to talk to a kind of doubling in size whilst being, as I said, profitable every year and everything else that goes with it, and maintaining that kind of front runner, almost pedestal brand kind of positioning. So so maybe we do underestimate that, and it's a thank you for the question, because it's a good moment maybe just to pause and reflect.
You just made me sort of think about it, the pace of change. But so look, as we wrap up the interview, thank you again so much for your time. Two questions in one, really. One which is, what's next for you and for the bank, and any sort of thoughts that we haven't covered there. But also, of course, you've been part, not specifically, but part of that Make Your Money Matter campaign. my son said to me the other day, he's in his mid-20s. He said, "That's good for you to be worried about all this stuff, Dad, but what can I do?" And I just said, "Make your money matter." How do you feel about your future, the bank's future, and things, the message that can resonate with the young to carry the cause forward?
Yeah, thank you. No, another good question. Look, I'm very positive about the bank's future. I mean, I'm leaving at a nice time because the bank's coming into a growth phase. I think we grew very quickly and had a maturity phase and a transformation phase. And now, Triodos Bank UK is well capitalised, has a high capital ratio, has excess liquidity. We're keen to lend and generate income and to reinvest in the business as a result of that. So I think I'm sure Mark and the team are going to deliver an exciting next chapter for Triodos. My own plans, honestly, I don't have any. I think for traditional career people, they're probably shaking, thinking, "What on earth are you doing?" and so on. I really think if you're so invested in something, it's more than a job for me. It's an entirely life-defining purpose, and I have been totally committed to it. And I want to have a little period of pause and reflection before, I accept and jump into the next challenge, whatever that is. So, I think that's a very healthy thing. And it's also very healthy, I think, as a leader to just take a step back occasionally, because you have to be a very consistent giver to other people and to a cause, and to just, nurture yourself. So you may remember I did that in 2021, just having a month off, and ended up writing a book about beavers, which...
absolutely.
I can't promise I'll do the same.
And make your money matter, and the youngsters.
Yeah, look, you will have heard me say before, I'm sure some of the people watching will, that money is a hugely powerful form of democracy. Where you choose to spend every day, where you choose to invest, where you choose to save is a hugely powerful form of democracy. Big financial institutions take notice of people leaving or moving their money and where it's going in the market. So I'd really encourage people to mobilise that power. And it doesn't have to be with Triodos. Look, it might not be the bank for you, it might not be services, but make a conscious choice. There's lots of choices out there, whether that's your everyday banking, whether that's your savings, your pension fund, your insurance choice. There are choices out there that are net zero aligned or might attract you in other ways. So that's the message, and will continue to be the message in whatever I do next.
Fantastic. Well, Bevis, as we have the image of the thought of you getting back in your canoe and paddling up the river, perhaps. For now, thanks for reflecting on such a wonderful career. You've been so kind to share your time with us, and for us to be able to pass your message on. But for now, Bevis Watts, thanks so much.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks for all your great support and advocacy for all the issues of sustainable finance as well. So, thank you.